Hello and welcome to the channel, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to replace the brake fluid on your car. The first thing we need to do is raise the vehicle up and remove all the wheels.
When people think about brakes, they usually picture pads and discs and brake shoes. But one of the most important parts of your braking system is actually the fluid. Brake fluid is what makes the entire system work. At its core, your braking system is hydraulic. That means it uses liquid pressure to transfer force. When you press the brake pedal, you're pushing a piston inside the master cylinder. That movement pressurizes the brake fluid, and because liquids don't compress, that pressure is transmitted almost instantly through the brake lines to each wheel. That's what pushes the brake pads against the discs and slows the car down. Now, this only works properly because brake fluid has some very specific properties. First, it has to be incompressible, so it can transfer force efficiently. Secondly, it needs a high boiling point, because the braking generates a lot of heat, especially during heavy or repeated stops. And thirdly, it has to remain stable across a wide range of temperatures, from freezing cold mornings to extreme heat under braking. This is where DOT4 brake fluid comes in. DOT4 fluid is a glycol-based fluid with a higher boiling point than the older types like DOT3. Typically, it has a dry boiling point of around 230 degrees centigrade or higher, which helps prevent the fluid from boiling under hard braking conditions. If brake fluid boils, it creates vapor bubbles, and unlike liquid, vapor can compress. That leads to a soft or spongy brake pedal, and in extreme cases, a loss of braking performance known as brake fade. Another important characteristic of DOT4 and all glycol-based brake fluids is that it is hygroscopic. That means it naturally absorbs moisture from air over time. Now, that might sound like a flaw, but it's actually by design. If moisture didn't get absorbed into the liquid, it would collect in pockets within the braking system, potentially freezing or causing localized corrosion. By absorbing the moisture, the fluid spreads it evenly, but there's a trade-off. As brake fluid absorbs water, its boiling point gradually decreases, so over time the fluid becomes less resistant to heat, increasing the risk of brake fade during heavy use. On top of that, the presence of moisture can lead to an internal corrosion of components like brake lines, calipers, and the master cylinder. That's why brake fluid isn't a fill it and forget it sort of item. Most manufacturers recommend replacing the brake fluid roughly every 2 years, regardless of mileage. Regular replacement ensures the fluid maintains its high boiling point and continues to protect the internal components of the braking system. So, while it might not be visible like brake pads or discs, brake fluid plays a critical role in both performance and safety, and keeping it fresh is one of the simplest ways of keeping your brake system working exactly as it should.
Okay, so the wheels are all off the vehicle now, so let's get the bonnet up and access the brake fluid reservoir and attach our newly acquired tool to bleed the brakes. Bleeder that I bought off eBay for I think £15.99. Probably be able to get it from Amazon as well. And as you can see there, I've got 6 half-litre bottles of brake fluid, and that should be sufficient enough to flush the system and replenish the brake fluid with clean, good brake fluid. So let's get the bottle filled up and let's get it all connected. So on this particular vehicle, the brake master cylinder reservoir is this item here. Let me show you. I've never seen fluid as black as what this is. It is pretty bad condition. I don't think it's ever been changed in its life. So hopefully you can see that without me casting too much of a shadow. The fluid is pretty black. It should be like a golden yellow colour, a bit like your first morning pee. So with the science out of the way and the explanation of how brake fluid actually operates and its properties, and it's hygroscopic, not hydroscopic, let's measure the fluid content. Now I've just got a cheap Amazon brake fluid tester here. I think it cost about £4. Starts off obviously at 0%. Anything greater than 3% onwards of moisture content, the fluid requires changing. So let's just turn it on again, pop it in, and straight away you can see all 4 lights are lit up. So it's got greater than 4% moisture content, which will reduce the boiling point because moisture is in there, and that will create the brake fade. And that is why, in all fairness, when I come off the motorway every morning, that my brakes do feel a little bit spongy and not very good. So let's get this brake fluid changed and get it flushed out and changed. Put it on nice and tight. Then we connect the tool itself, so it's now connected. Tool is there just off the camera. So let me just reposition the camera. So the pressure vessel, if that's what you want to call it, does have a pressure gauge. It red lines at about 40 psi, just shy of 3 bar, but I'm not going to take it to that amount. I'm just going to keep pumping it slowly, making sure no fluid comes out of the pressure reservoir, sorry, the brake reservoir. Making sure that that cap is tight because it was just losing a bit of pressure. And I like to pump it up to just under, well, between 1.5 and 2 bars of pressure. So that's at 1 bar. Unfortunately, we are leaking. So this is what you get, if you can see there, for using cheap Chinese shit, probably. So let me just release the pressure out of there and we can address what this problem is. Okay, what happened there was that union wear was slack. So it's a 15mm spanner. I've just got about 1/4 of a turn on it, nipped it up, and let's just try it all again now. So guys, I've nipped it up, but unfortunately it's still leaking. And as you can see, it's overfilling the reservoir. And I think once I take this out, I think there should be maybe a fibre washer or something under there. And I can't find anything in my garage or any little bit of rubber. So what I'm going to do first is just bleed off or try and suck out quite a bit of the fluid to start with. And what I've done, I've just put a little bit of tubing on the bottom there so it sits in, and hopefully that should stop filling once it reaches that sort of level. So I'm just going to put this back on, give it a nip up and see if that works. But what I'm going to do off the camera, I'm just going to empty some fluid out of there. Okay, so I've just connected the bleed bottle to the passenger side front brake caliper, and I pumped the pedal about 40 times just to get rid of a load of fluid out the reservoir. So I'm going to connect the tool back up again now, and we're going to give it a pump up to about 1 bar and see if it stops leaking. Okay, so let's see if this has fixed it now. So I'm slowly pumping it whilst I'm also watching the connection on the master cylinder. So far, so good. That seems to have done the trick. So we're at just over 1 bar. And the tool seems to be holding steady at the master cylinder itself. So now I'll go to the passenger side rear and we'll start bleeding the brake there and flushing the fluid through. Okay, so I'm not going to use the bottle that come with the kit, judging by so far how good things seal. I've made years ago exactly the same thing using an old brake fluid bottle and the adapter which fits onto the bleed nipple, which cost me about 60p, I think, off Temu or Amazon, I can't remember which. So let's get that connected now onto the brake nipple. I'll show you a picture where the brake nipple is. It's on the wheel cylinder on the back of the brake drum, and it's the lefty-loosey, righty-tighty principle. So we turn it anti-clockwise to release it, and we pop that on, and then hopefully then we'll start flushing the fluid through. It is a little bit tight to get the spanner on and the rubber grommet, but we just crack off the bleed nipple. Fluid's already coming out of it. I can't get my spanner off. So that's the bleed nipple sufficiently undone, and the fluid now is going through the pipe itself. I'd like to have seen really dirty fluid going through, but remember we have drained a lot of fluid out of this reservoir. So what I'll also go and do as well is go and pump the pedal a few times just to force a little bit of fluid through there. So I'll just go do that now. So I've just given that about 10 pumps. As you can see, we're about half a litre of fluid. So once that gets up to the 600 millilitre mark, bearing in mind how degraded this fluid is, I do want to give it a good flush. So I'll just go and check the pressure on the pressure tool, pump it back up to 1 bar, if it's, or 1 bar. So I've pumped that up to 1 bar again, and we're just past the 600 millilitre mark. So I think what I'll do, I'll lock the bleed nipple off and we'll go to the other side rear caliper, rear brake drum to bleed that. Okay, so with the initial bit I've taken out of the reservoir, which is probably about 300 or 400 millilitres, I've flushed through, again, about 200 to 300 millilitres of fresh fluid through this side of the circuit. Once locked off, always remember, put the rubber bung back on the bleed nipple. And now we'll go across to the driver's side rear. Okay, so I've emptied the bottle and we're going to put the spanner on, just crack it off and then put the rubber bung on the nipple. Here you can see, hopefully, the air bubbles coming through. And we're going to bleed through again about 300 millilitres of fluid, ensuring that the pressure remains at about 1 bar on the tool. And what I'll do now, I'll go and give it 10 good pumps again of the pedal, just to help it force through. Okay, so we're at 250, 275 mil, roughly what I need to pump through it. So with a 7 mil spanner, I will just tighten up the bleed nipple, nice and tight. And don't forget to put the rubber cover back on, dust cover. So I'll just lift the pipe up and allow all the excess fluid to drain into the container. And now we'll move to the driver's side front. Okay, so now we're at the driver's side front and you can hopefully see the process a lot clearer. So we just take off the dust cover. On this bleed nipple, it's a 10 millimeter. And then we just put it sufficiently round so you can get a full turn on it. And crack the nipple off. And hopefully there you can see all the fluid coming through. I've emptied the bottle, so once again, we're looking at around about 300 millilitres of fluid, checking the pressure on the gauge of the tool to make sure it maintains 1 to 1.5 bar of pressure. So again, I'll go give it 10 pumps of the pedal and recheck the gauge, which is just under 1 bar. So we'll take it up to 1.5 bar. We've used a fair amount of fluid out of the container as well, and we're just around about 250 mil. So that's 300 mil, going through a little bit quicker on the front here. Again, just lift it up to get rid of the excess out of the pipe. Back into the container. Pop the rubber cap back on and give it a bit of a clean off. That's that can of fluid, brake cleaner emptied. So now we'll move on to the other side. So now we're at the passenger side front. This is the side that I initially bled just to empty the reservoir. Again, 10 millimeter spanner on the nipple. Pop it on, crack it off, and then allow, hopefully you can see the fluid going through. Allow another 300 ml of fluid to go through whilst checking the pressure on the gauge. And like before, I'll go give it 10 pumps of the pedal just to assist it through. So we'll now lock it off. Raise the pipe to empty the fluid into the container. That's all done. Make sure it's tight. Pop the cap back on and just give it a clean. And hopefully you can see there, let me just move the pipe out of the way. And hopefully you can see there in the container, it's just over 300 millilitres on this side. So what we'll do now, we'll release the pressure in the tool, check the level, top it up to its maximum, and that's it, job done. So there's still about 1 bar of pressure in the gauge. So all we do, we just release the pressure out of the system until you hear it stop hissing. And then we take the cap off, raise it up in the air to release the fluid and drain it back into the vessel. So we just unscrew the cap. I'm keeping the pipe on this time. Lift it up in the air just to let the fluid out the pipe go back into the container. And as you can see, we're just a little bit over the maximum. Perhaps whilst it was empty I should have cleaned inside the reservoir itself, but we know now that's full of fresh fluid. So I can put the cap on and I'll just give it a clean around there and put the wheels back on, test the pedal, make sure it's nice and solid and give it a road test. Okay, let's just try the pedal. That's nice and solid, but obviously we've got no servo action. Press the clutch, start the engine up, and we've got a nice solid brake pedal. So I'll pop the wheels back on and we'll take it for a road test. So the wheels are back on, all torqued up, lowered onto the floor. Give it a quick road test. Pedal is lovely and solid, far better than it was before. So that's a great instructional video, guys, on how to change the brake fluid on your car. Thanks for watching.